Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DMV Confidential. I'm Kenzie Chase.
And I'm Jenny Gable.
And today we wanted to talk to you about another case. So the case we want to bring to you today is about a 24-year-old DC police officer who was found murdered in her Montgomery County home in 1995. So on this case, there was actually a moment where it was almost on the brink of resolution, and then it changed. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so 24-year-old Denna Campbell, she was a 4-year veteran of the DC Police Department when she was found shot in her Silver Spring apartment. It was on September 16th, 1995. She was actually living with her boyfriend at the time, and he is the one who called police around 5 a.m. that morning and said that somebody had broken into his apartment. He just got there, and he found Campbell bloodied on the floor.
Yeah, and he did tell investigators, he did tell dispatch, that she had been shot.
Yeah.
And then he also added, she's a police officer.
Yeah.
So based on this information, they kind of upgrade the call from an armed robbery to a murder, just based off the information that, was provided. And just something so we can clear this up going forward. At the time of this whole thing happening, he was actually known by the name Kenneth Wansum. But in 2021, he changed his name to Amir Ali. So for the remainder of this episode, we're actually going to just be calling him Amir, but just know at the time that he was known by a different name.
Right.
So yeah.
He calls police and tells them that he sees her bloodied on the floor, that she's dead. And they actually at one point, according to filings, dispatch asked him if he could check on her. They thought this was a little bit weird as well because he apparently refused and hung up the phone.
Yeah. Which, I guess we don't really know what was going through his head at that time. If he really just came home and found this scene and his girlfriend is on the floor, she had been shot.
Could have just been in shock.
There's probably so much emotion.
Didn't know how to react.
I
can't imagine walking into something like that.
Yeah.
But that's just something that they noted that they thought was at the time a little bit odd.
Yeah. And so then they actually get to the scene, and that's when they kind of describe sort of what they saw. One of the things that they noticed almost right away is actually Amir himself.
Right.
And
so it appeared like he was wearing a white T-shirt, and they noticed it appeared that on the front there was stains that looked like blood stains.
Yeah, there was also giant tears. So they did say
Yes.
there was tears on his shirt and what appeared, like you mentioned, blood stains.
Yeah.
Then they obviously also go and they find Campbell.
Yeah.
And she was actually in a weird state too, where she was sort of wrapped in a comforter.
Yeah, they described that she had appeared to be wrapped in her own comforter, and she had a wrap around her head.
Yeah.
As well. So it wasn't actually
very covered up.
It actually wasn't immediately apparent to the officers on the scene that she had been shot.
Yeah. So they actually thought that was also unusual because, like we mentioned, he, in the call to 911, said that she had been shot. And
Right.
An autopsy report later confirmed that, yes, she did die by several gunshots.
Right.
But
And
they
it was
didn't
just-
know that right away because of the way
Yeah.
she was found and
It
all
was
the coverings.
very odd to them, and I guess you could maybe possibly he was so in shock finding her bloody on the floor, just kind of assumed that she had been shot. But that was something that investigators also noted, as you mentioned, that was weird to them because they weren't able to immediately tell.
Yeah, something else that was odd in general was he came home and he told investigators that he found the door 3 inches, very specific, 3 inches open.
Right.
The door was open ajar. But investigators noted that was a little odd just because his keys were actually in the
Right.
door. Almost as if, you put your keys in, turn it, and
Right.
open the door. Why would you
So
put
they were
your-
like, why would he have tried to open the door if the door was already open, saying
Yeah.
that someone had forced their way in? Because, again, he told them that he had just gotten there and found her this
Yeah.
way. Another thing that kind of stuck with me is that, again, they mentioned that somebody had forced their way in the home, maybe as a burglary, but a lot of items were actually out in the open, like Campbell's purse and other valuables like that hadn't been taken.
Yeah, so that was odd to investigators too. There was also reportedly no signs of forced entry, nothing that appeared suspicious as far as windows.
The doorknob didn't seem like someone had tried to break in.
Yeah,
right?
so it's looking very odd and unusual right off the bat. I mean, like you mentioned, you know, her purse is out. You know, if someone came in and stole anything, why would they leave some of these valuables that would be quick and easy to sort of grab and get away with?
They actually did note that one thing that was taken was actually Campbell's own police service weapon.
Yeah, her handgun was gone.
Right.
And that's pretty much the only thing that seems to be missing. So now we're actually going to talk about Amir. Amir actually initially does cooperate with investigators. They take him down to the station, they bring him in, and he kind of gives a very, very detailed account of what happened the day before, the morning leading into it. And I think, honestly, the best way I can just explain this to you is to actually just go through the timeline he gives. Because like I mentioned,
It's very vivid and descriptive.
it's specific. So I'm just going to go through and kind of go through the timeline of what he tells investigators, and then we'll talk about our thoughts on it. So on September 16th, the day of the murder, he said around 1:30 he picked Campbell up from McDonald's in Benning Road, which, by the way, she was a 4-year veteran of the police department in D.C., the D.C. Police Department, but she was also a part-time security guard
at McDonald's.
At that McDonald's. So he picked her up from work at around 1:30 a.m. Then around 2:40 a.m. is when they get back home to their apartment in Montgomery County. At 3:20 a.m., he says that she asked him to go to the store and pick up a few items. Specifically, he says that she asked him to pick up some ginger ale, Listerine, and toothpaste, because I guess they were out.
Mouthwash too, right?
Yeah.
He listed like very specific items that she had asked him to pick up.
So, which I don't know why you'd go there at 3:20 a.m. to pick up these items. You would think you would just wait till, you know, it's later in the morning. But apparently this is what he's telling investigators. So at 3:20 a.m., he leaves. He goes to pick up these items.
He says she was going to bed too, right?
Yeah, he did also say that Campbell was, you know, on the bed watching TV, watching some sort of show, and like heading to bed. So she was going to bed. So then he says in between, you know, picking up these items, he decided that he was going to try to go to the Foxy Playground, which is a strip club. And he said he was going to go there to go gamble with some friends. But when he got there, you know, it was closed.
Right.
He also said he was going to go there to pick up his bike that he left in the kitchen.
Yeah, because he's a frequent, I guess, customer there. So he had left his bike there and was just going to pick it up.
Yeah, but it was closed. So then, you know, after that, he goes wandering, quote, looking for friends to hang out with. I don't think he got much luck with that, because then he goes to Duke's Seafood,
which he's also a regular at.
Yeah, also closed. So he goes, I mean, I don't know what place would be open at this time except for maybe like a McDonald's, but Duke's Seafood was also closed. Then he goes to the CVS to reportedly, you know, pick up these items. But then that CVS was also closed.
And what I found kind of interesting about that is he actually describes the exact route he took to the
he's
CVS.
very, 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 very specific.
So he's giving them a lot of details.
Yeah, so he's actually saying, like, I took this route, I turned left here, I turned right here, I got to this CVS, but it was closed. Well, then he reportedly goes across the street around 4:05 a.m. and goes to a payphone to leave a message on Campbell's answering machine and says, quote, "Boo, I am stopping at the store to pick up some Listerine and soda and wondered if you needed anything."
Right. So that was definitely
we'll come back to that, because
we'll come back to more on why that was.
Yeah, because it's very odd that he would say that. So the next timestamp we actually have is actually 4:42 a.m. and that's after failing at this first CVS, decided to go to the CVS in Langley Park, which he knows is open 24 hours. So he goes there to Langley Park, he pays in cash, and receipts place him there at that time at 4:42 a.m. That's when the timestamp is. Then he heads home. And on his way home, he says he stops on the side of the road. And then he gets back to his place around 5:04 that's when he makes the phone call.
Right. That's when he says he walked in and found Campbell shot.
So that's when police say that they got that. Around that time, they got the phone call. So somewhere between 4:42 and 5:04, he walks in and sees her in the state, calls 911.
Right.
Now we want to talk about this timeline because right off the rip,
there was a lot of discrepancies and things that kind of raised concerns and alarm bells for investigators when they were examining.
And for us. I mean, I noticed, they didn't say this in the court documents, but my own curiosity made me do this. I actually looked up their address from that McDonald's on Benning Road. Mm-hmm. And at 9 a.m. on a Monday, it only takes about 26 minutes to get there.
Right.
And that's, 9 a.m. on a weekday. So I can't imagine at
like in the middle of the night.
Yeah, in the middle of the night.
That it would take as long as it took, right?
Yeah. So it took them about 50 minutes, but it only is about a 26-minute drive. Right. So there's about 25 minutes there that's unaccounted for.
Right.
But, maybe they took a long route. We don't really know. But
maybe they were talking in the car. There could be like different reasons for that. But that was interesting as well. I also noticed that.
Yeah.
Something that also really just kind of stuck with me is the fact that he went to the Foxy Playground and Duke's Seafood and they were closed. But detectives mentioned that they had spoke to the managers of these places and that they knew him, that he was a regular there. So they were like, should have known that these places were closed.
I don't know about Duke's Seafood, if he was a regular there, but I do know that he was a regular at the Foxy Playground.
I know that Duke's Seafood mentioned that they knew him.
Okay.
So I don't know if he was like as much of a regular, but they knew of him, and they both said that they figured he would know if they were open or closed.
Yeah, and also the thing that I thought was interesting about that part in general too was, he said he was going there to meet up with some friends.
Right.
Then he went around looking for friends, but like, where are these friends?
Right.
Did they come forward? Did investigators ever get a hold of them? Were they there? What's going on with these friends that he was hanging out with? Right. And did none of them know that this strip club was going to be closed?
Right, if there were frequents of it. Yeah. The main thing, though, that did stick with me, and this is something that they specifically note, is the phone call. So he called her from the payphone after he said that his whole reason for leaving was to get these items.
Because remember, like you said, his whole reason for leaving around this time of 3:20 a.m. was to go get these items that Campbell reportedly asked him to go get.
But then when he calls her, he's asking her, I'm going to CVS. Did you need anything? And this is also after the fact he said that he knew that she was going to bed. And the whole reason he left was to pick up these items.
Why would you leave a thing on her answering machine if you knew she was going to bed? Why would you ask her if she needed any of these things when you knew that that's why you were out there in the first place?
Right.
So many questions.
I think just the timeline of, because he was so descriptive and they're able to see it's not making sense to investigators here. They definitely have a lot of questions.
And something I want to mention just as a general thing is being super specific is really good if you have the proof, you have the evidence, you have things that place you certain places to know that you're innocent. But some of these accounts, the more you give police, the more that they are able to sort of pick apart.
Right.
So I think that's exactly what they're doing with this timeline, especially when we are seeing up front in some of these discrepancies.
Mm-hmm. And I guess there could be, different reasons why maybe some things he had mentioned, maybe he just couldn't remember correctly. Yeah. He did just find his girlfriend like this in this state. But at the same time, as you just mentioned, it's all the specific details, like the fact that he told them he was leaving to pick up these items, but then, she had asked him to do that, but then he called her.
Memories always get fuzzy. For sure, especially when you're not thinking straight and there's a lot of pressure. But it's just interesting that he did go into such specifics, only for the specifics to not match up.
Right.
So then we actually get into, I want to talk about the day of.
Right.
So before the actual murder, before, police bring him in and get this account, they also then go back and interview people and get what happened that day.
So actually, Campbell, as we mentioned earlier, she was working part-time at the McDonald's as a security guard, and two of her coworkers there actually ended up telling investigators that she had been arguing with Amir during her shift. Mm-hmm. She had actually mentioned she was on a phone call with him, and she told one coworker, quote, "I've got to end this relationship," and that's according to police filings.
Yeah.
So it seemed like they were in some sort of
They were
argument.
definitely rocky. And one later said that a second coworker actually described Campbell as, quote, desperate before her boyfriend picked her up.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like things were
Right.
super great. And one thing that's also notable
Was his outfit, right?
yeah, his clothing. So we mentioned that when police came into the scene, they saw Amir with a white shirt, rips, like
potential
stains.
blood stains.
Yeah. But something that was notably missing when earlier in the day when he came to pick up his girlfriend was those rips,
Right.
was those red
Right.
stains.
The coworker, confirmed that he was wearing the same outfit, but it seemed to be intact. There was nothing of the sort on it. So that
Yeah.
is something that they noted as interesting because it appeared to them that between the time he picked her up and the time Campbell was found, the time in between, that some sort
Something
of struggle,
happened.
he had been in a struggle with somebody.
Yeah. And
Right.
I don't know if they said that he had been a struggle, but something happened with his clothing, obviously.
Right.
So then we actually go into the interviews with the neighbors. So one neighbor actually reported hearing gunshots around, get this, 3:20 a.m.
Right. And that's the time that he was supposedly leaving to go pick up these items.
Yeah. So, and I think it's interesting in general that they use the exact number. I mean, this could have just been police filings trying to keep it like for simplicity's sake. But, Amir specifically says he leaves around 3:20. Gunshots heard around 3:20.
And they say about 5 gunshots, right?
Yeah, the neighbor does say that it was 5 gunshots that were heard, which was the same number that she was later found to have suffered from.
And also, another thing that's very important to note is that another neighbor on Heather Hollow Circle where this happened, they reported being awakened around the time that the shots were fired by a male voice yelling, quote, "I told you not to do this to me."
Yeah.
So
I mean, and we knew that Campbell and Amir were reportedly not on great terms at this time. So there's a lot of things that are not looking great for Amir, according to investigators. In investigators' eyes, things are not looking super great. And so we did also mention, her handgun was missing. Investigators do, in fact, say that they believe that she was shot with her own department-issued handgun.
right.
They also say that there was DNA that was recovered from her fingernail clippings.
Which were actually broken off, right?
Yeah, and usually when nails are broken off, it usually is indicative of some sort of struggle, like some sort of defensive, like she had fought
She
back.
was fighting, yeah.
Yeah. So they did say that her nails were broken off during what they said was probably a struggle.
And also, I believe we mentioned earlier, they, take Amir in for questioning. And initially, he's very cooperative, but then he actually, they're trying to collect his clothing because he has the bloodied shirt. And, according to filings, he actually said he would sink his teeth into their chest and make them regret this day.
And Jenny,
He became, resistant.
That's so, intense to say
very
to an
intense.
investigator, especially when you're sitting down for questioning. I mean, everything, I don't know at this point if they, read him his Miranda rights. I don't know if they, took him in as a suspect or if they were just taking him just to talk. But you're telling this directly to an investigator, that doesn't look great.
Right.
I would never say that to a detective.
Right. They just noted that he became, was initially cooperative, but then became very resistant. The filing also says that he forcibly resisted them to take his clothing, as we mentioned, but also to have a gunshot residue kit done on his hands.
Yeah. Which I actually didn't even know was a thing, honestly.
Right. I didn't know that before either, reading this as well.
I didn't know that you could, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but when you think of a gunshot residue, what does that even look like?
Right. How would they be able to test that?
Yeah. So
That's
they,
very
and then they
interesting.
also actually took more evidence. They took some evidence from the money, the change that Amir got back from that CVS.
Right. So the receipt did, they did have the receipt to prove that he was there at the time and made the transaction. But as you mentioned, Kenzie, the money that he received actually had blood on it at the time. And they took the change from his pocket and were able to use that as well.
Yeah, and same thing with the car that he was driving, which also happened to be Officer Campbell's car. They took some blood samples from there as well, and pretty much
was on the stick shift.
Yeah,
Which was interesting.
pretty much from all of that information, from all the DNA, they basically were able to rule that Amir could not be eliminated as a suspect, which means there was enough reason to suspect he could have been a suspect in this,
Right.
to not rule him out. He was not being ruled out at this time. So, I mean, honestly, Jenny, I mean, I don't really think things are looking that great for him. I mean, police filings say that there's discrepancies.
The timeline and the, you know, his clothing, and also as well as he became uncooperative.
Yeah. The more you become uncooperative, I mean, there are some things with investigations that, like, I personally, if I was ever brought in, I would not do. For example, you know, obviously practice your right to stay silent. I would never take a polygraph because I don't think that they're very accurate. I don't think they're very, they never prove you innocent. They only ever hurt you. So, like, there are certain things that, like, you can sort of stay silent on.
That are within your rights.
Yeah, within your rights. But when officers are actually trying to collect evidence, you should not fight that.
It was something of, like, it definitely raised questions for them why he wasn't.
Yeah, I'm all a fan for, like, you know your rights, protect your rights, but I don't think this is looking great for him. Well, so then they actually go to Campbell was warning about her death days prior.
Right. So after,
she
talking to more people, they're able to kind of paint this picture of how she was feeling the days before she was found shot to try to see again, like, if, you know, who could have done something like this. And, you know, as we mentioned earlier, Amir had been living with her for about 6 months, according to police filings. But undercover officers at the place, the Foxy Playground, where he was, like, I guess, a regular guest, they said that they encountered him a few days before Campbell was found shot around September 12th.
Yeah.
And they said that he actually seemed upset with someone who they assumed was Campbell, and he was kind of saying that he believed that she was possibly cheating on him.
Yeah, he might have suspected that she was cheating, according to this undercover officer, and said, quote, "I'm going to kill them both."
Right.
He also said something like, I mean, he's pretty graphic with some of it, but the main part that we want to get from this is that he said, quote, "I'm going to kill them both."
Right.
So
and then they keep speaking with, you know, neighbors and fellow officers, and they actually are able to kind of gauge from these interviews that Campbell was like afraid of Amir.
Yeah, because remember, she is a DC police officer, and I think that's like, I think that's getting a little lost right now, and so I want to bring it back that she's a DC police officer,
right?
And she was murdered in her home, so like it really can happen to anyone,
right?
And I think that's so scary because she was, like you mentioned, she was actually talking to some of her coworkers, and she was like, she's
expressing fear. She said that she had even began sleeping with her department-issued gun under her pillow.
She was clearly scared, according to people that knew her. And one of them even said that just about 3 days before, Campbell basically told another police officer that she was planning to leave Amir.
Right.
And just 3 days before she said that she was planning to leave, she told them, you know, if I don't show up to work on Saturday, you'll know he killed me and buried me somewhere. And oh my gosh, Jenny.
Yeah.
Like, that is such an intense statement.
I can't even imagine, you know, according to these interviews, they're saying that she's feeling this way. I can't even imagine. She also told that officer, quote, "If something happens to me, I want you to tell the police."
Yeah, well, and we also, when we think about, like, when we think about, like, domestic violence and how hard it is to actually leave those relationships, I mean, they say that, like, experts say that, like, the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when they try to leave.
Right.
And
I can't imagine if, you know, they're saying she's feeling this way, the type of fear that she was feeling.
Yeah, and this is a police officer, someone you would think wouldn't need to feel this way, that would have the law on her side, and she still feels like she's going through this. And
that also kind of reminds me, just on the subject of her being an officer, that at one point, according to the filings, as we mentioned, she actually told another officer that she worked with that he had reportedly, Amir had put his hands on her. Yeah. And that she pulled out her own gun to protect herself.
Yeah, so she actually did pull out her gun at some point. Now, this all happens. She like warns that she's scared, that she's planning on leaving, and then she's killed just days later.
Yeah.
And Amir is obviously, I mean, he's like suspect number one.
Yeah. I believe they're saying that at this point he's the only person of interest that they have in this case.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Amir. Mm-hmm. he actually does have like a criminal history
Right.
where he was, charged with at some point armed robbery with murder.
I believe he actually, according to like the charging documents, they said that he had 15 prior offenses, including murder 2 while armed, robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, stolen vehicle, and that this all happened in D.C. And then he also had a prior arrest in Prince George's County for burglary and transporting a handgun.
Yeah, very, very odd. Like, he definitely doesn't have the most clean criminal history.
Right.
But regardless, so they actually do arrest him.
Yes.
And for some unknown reason, they drop the charges.
Yeah, so he's arrested and charged, which is the charging document we were referring to for his prior arrests. But prosecution drops the charges.
Yeah, which I think is also crazy because we don't know why.
Right.
And then, so what happens? Well, then the case, unfortunately, goes. So then, 30 years later, they finally decide to reopen this case.
Yeah.
It takes 30 years. I mean, you would think that they had the person in their custody who was their number one suspect, and then drop the charges, and now where do they start? Well, they start from square one. And a lot of the information that we actually told you earlier in this episode actually came as part of this new reopened case.
Right. All the additional interviews and some of the collecting of testing the DNA evidence that they had collected. This is all kind of came out later.
Yeah.
For further evidence.
So I want to play you this clip real quick, and it's actually from someone who was sort of there from the beginning.
I worked in the homicide division in 1995 when this case happened. So I was familiar, although I wasn't initially assigned the case, I was familiar with the case.
So that was a detective who was actually on the homicide case, on the homicide team back when this was first brought up. And then she actually became assigned to this case during this new 30-year difference.
So she's been following this case for a very long time.
Yeah. Which I also think is, must be super interesting for her. Like, she even mentions later that she's always had an interest in this case. So to finally actually be able to work on it and see if, it can have some sort of resolution, must have been like a very surreal feeling.
Yeah. I can't even imagine how that would feel after all these years have passed.
Yeah. Well, so then when they actually go through and reopen this case and they go back through the neighbors, they go back through the coworkers, all these interviews, sure enough, they actually do come up with the same conclusion that detectives determined 30 years prior.
Yeah.
And they do actually arrest Amir for the second time.
For the same murder
For the same murder. Now, this is not double jeopardy at all because he's not actually been to court.
Right. He was never convicted the first time or anything like that, but they do arrest him on August 5th, and this is of this year, for her murder. And yeah, they said that they claim that it's because of more statements that they had gathered during the interviews and from the DNA, as we had mentioned. So they're able to charge him there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's 30 years in the making. They finally are able to have some sort of conclusion. And loved ones are actually very relieved. So we're actually going to play a clip of some loved ones talking about the news and him being arrested.
I've been waiting for this for years.
I never lost hope. I always knew that we'll come to this day.
Now, I know that's very brief, but I mean, just imagine 30 years later, they actually have an arrest again. And I wonder how they're feeling.
Yeah, I know that one of them had mentioned that they had been kind of holding out hope all these years that there would be a resolution. So I'm sure that, I can't even imagine feeling the sense of peace that there's going to be someone held responsible for this.
Yeah. And we do have someone from the actual press conference that spoke about the arrest and how they feel like it was actually justified.
While this arrest won't erase the pain of losing Dina, we hope that it does bring some resolution and sense of peace to everyone involved.
So that was Mark Yamada, I believe, with Montgomery County Police.
So none of this actually, of course, changes anything. This doesn't bring her back. This doesn't bring Officer Campbell back. But it does offer some sort of peace to some families, I think, just because, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, this has been 30 years of just not knowing anything.
And I know that they had mentioned that her mother, Campbell's mother, has passed away at this point, but that when her father found out about the arrest, the only words that he could really get out were "thank God."
I know, and just think
Which
about
is just
that. Like,
honestly, it's heartbreaking.
after all this time, I mean, just thank God. Like, that's all you can say at that point, because the mother never got to. The mother was around, I think, when he was first arrested, but not when he was arrested again 30 years later. And just imagine how they're feeling.
She wasn't able to see her, daughter get this closure and justice.
Yeah. Well, and Jenny, I don't actually know that you can really say that it's full closure yet, just because he still hasn't actually been convicted.
That's true. He has not been convicted, just charged.
That's why we want to be careful with this, because this is obviously, I think people are obviously going to draw their own conclusions from this, but he innocent until proven guilty. That's
Right.
the way our court system works.
It's
And
very important to note that he has not been convicted. He's still going through the
Yes.
legal process.
he does actually have a hearing scheduled, and it's
Yeah.
coming up.
So he actually does have his hearing scheduled, as you mentioned, Kenzie. It's for September 5th, which is in just a few days. He was arrested on August 5th, and then he was actually held on $1 million bond
Yeah.
earlier in August.
So as far as I'm aware, he's actually still in the Montgomery County correctional facility. I checked court records before this episode, and he seems to still be there. But there is still not a final conclusion to this yet, because we're still figuring it out. This is just a hearing. They still have to set if he's going to go to trial, if they're going to
Right.
get a
There's
plea
still a
deal.
lot
There's
of
still so
process
much
and steps
stuff
to be
that has
taken.
to, and that's just the way the justice system works. And so we don't know how this is fully going to pan out yet, but we do know that we're going to be monitoring it. We're going to be keeping up with it, and we're going to be updating you guys with it.
Yeah.
So I would tune in to dcnewsnow.com. I would tune into On Air.
And if you want to see more episodes like this where we kind of delve into cases from around the DMV, then be sure to tune in.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time for our next case.